Hey guys, Sean here, welcome to the F1 Word and to a roundup of some of the news stories that have caught my eye over the last few days from the world of Formula 1. And we're going to start with some good news for a change, and that is that for the first time in recent history, if not ever, the Grand Prix Drivers Association has achieved 100% unity and has the full backing of the entire Formula 1 grid. It's a hugely significant step because, if nothing else, it's going to prevent Liberty Media and the FIA being able to just walk all over the drivers with any decisions they make for the future. And with all the proposed changes coming up in the sport, it is so important that the drivers stand together and get their voices heard. I just really hope they can. GPDA chairman Alex Kvyat said the GPDA now has 100% membership for the first time in recent memory and maybe history. F1 is entering a period of evolution, change, and perhaps even a degree of turmoil. All the drivers recognise that they must be united and represented in order to face that challenge and prevent any politics or fights for power from ultimately compromising on-track performance. The drivers believe unity is fundamental for the sport's success. As we know, over 2017, Liberty Media have been looking at ways to raise the profile of the sport, I guess you could say, with I'd go with mixed results. F1 Live London was considered a bit of a success, even though actually it was quite short notice for fans. I went, but I think I found out about 6 p.m. the night before. But despite that, like I say, it was considered a success. A little bit cringy, but it was pretty good. Whereas the Michael Buffer announcing of the drivers at the US Grand Prix was, well, widely criticised and described once again as cringeworthy. But as I've said before in videos, at least Liberty Media are trying things. Some people will love, some people will hate, but that's the only way they're going to be able to make changes to the sport, is to try things out. So, we've got to give them credit for that. But with regard to all future changes, the GPDA are keen to be involved and consulted as much as possible. A bit of a long quote coming up now, but I kind of had to put all these points in this video, to be fair, because they're all pretty spot on. Kvyat went on to say that the GPDA demands only that the sport remains the centre of attention, and we want to hold everyone in the decision-making process accountable for their actions and decisions. Great sport is what we love to see. If great sport is embedded in a suitably created show and race experience, that would indeed be good. If the sport sucks, everything around the sport itself is only expensive, inauthentic and semi-irrelevant. We need an on-track competition, but not artificially created. And here's a line I can completely get on board with. Business decisions and political power fights have damaged the sport enough at vulnerable times over the last decade. But the GPDA has repeatedly said that the on-track action needs to be better, more closely fought and authentic. And finally, he said, as such, we are glad that Liberty and their technical research team follow the GPDA's suggestion from more than a year ago, where we wish for a less sensitive airflow concept of aerodynamic related rules in order to be able to race closer. It's very hard to disagree with what Alex Kvyat is saying there, and like I said earlier, guys, I just hope that the GPDA can get their voices heard and help to push through some positive changes to the sport going forward. Toro Rosso boss Franz Tost has said this week that he believes Russian Daniel Kvyat is still good enough to be racing in Formula 1. That's despite dropping him twice in 2017. Tost said, I am still convinced that Daniel has a very high natural speed. He was sometimes even faster than Daniel Ricciardo, but somehow last year and this year, he couldn't show the potential that was within him. He was involved in many incidents, but in his defence, I also have to say that he had many reliability issues, and that didn't help build up his confidence. What also won't have helped build up his confidence, France, is that you kept dropping him. You and Red Bull. But anyway, let's not get back into that just yet. He went on to say sometimes he was too aggressive at the beginning of the race. The first corner was his weak point. He wanted too much in the first 100 metres. Success by any means. That puts you under pressure, unnecessary pressure, and that never works. I hope for him that he gets another chance, as I think he deserves to be in Formula 1. Just not enough to give him a seat in 2018. But anyway, after reading this story, I decided to go back and look at Daniel Kvyat's results with Red Bull and Toro Rosso and try and work out why they dropped him and why all of a sudden they're saying he's a good driver and deserves to be in F1 when, like I say, a few months ago, he wasn't good enough. In his first season with Red Bull, Daniel Kvyat finished ahead of Daniel Ricciardo by 3 points in the Drivers' Championship. He had technical issues which prevented him starting in Australia, of course, and then 2 further retirements through the year. Daniel Ricciardo also had 3 retirements in 2015, although one of those was unofficial because he did complete 90% race distance in Russia and finished 15th officially, but he did technically retire from that race. And they finished the season on fairly equal terms, with Kvyat taking a 4th, a 7th and a 10th, and Ricciardo taking a 5th, an 11th and a 6th. So there wasn't much between them in that first season. You then drop into 2016, another DNS at the start of the season in Australia. Again, not his fault, but then it's a 7th place, a 3rd place in China, and a 15th place in his final race for Red Bull in Russia. He was dropped after that because the team felt he was too much of a hothead or whatever, or inconsistent. That's despite the fact that his teammate actually only finished 11th in Russia. And it's just so obvious after he was dropped how much of a kick it was for him. He did get a point on his Toro Rosso return in Spain, but then his career just plummeted. And that's no coincidence. That's absolutely no coincidence. If I were a team boss and I had to choose between Verstappen and Kvyat, I would 100% put Verstappen in that car. So I get what Red Bull did and why they did it, but at least have the guts to call it what it is. Don't make out that he's inconsistent and a terrible driver. Yeah, Russia, he was an absolute hothead with Vettel in the first couple of corners, and he was rightly criticised for that. But the same people that criticised him also praised him for his torpedo move in China on Vettel and Raikkonen. So what's a guy to do, really? I said at the time, and I'll say it again, Red Bull should have just come out and said, look, we want to put Verstappen in this car. We think he's better than you. We're putting you in the Toro Rosso. That's all it is, mate. Thanks for everything. But they didn't. They decided to slam him instead. But that's F1 for you. It is dog eat dog. And I will say finally on this one as well, if people are going to try and convince me that Ericsson, Stroll, Sirotkin, etc. are good enough to be an F1, then Kvyat absolutely deserves to be as well and is more than good enough. McLaren are confident going into 2018 that they can challenge Red Bull for podiums and regular podiums at that, and they're also very, very confident and very happy that they've managed to turn around the ground they lost by the late announcement of their engine supplier for 2018. Just one line on that from McLaren boss Eric Boulier. He said that maybe we made the decision to change the engine manufacturer 2 weeks too late for our schedule, but these 2 weeks have almost been recovered. During the interview, which you can find on the F1 website and get all the full quotes and details on there, he did shed some light on how the switch to Renault actually came about. And by shed some light, I mean confirm what we already kind of had worked out. He said, I went to the management, showed them the data and told them that we cannot accept another year like this. We had a tough first year with Honda, we had a tough second year and had expected progress good enough to get us back to where we belong. But Barcelona showed that we would go backwards and that was absolutely not an option. He went on to say, we have a new team which has been reconstructed in the last 3 years. New people, very good new people, competitive people who used to win. And the danger was we'd lose them. The perception of a team is still very much based on drivers because they are the faces of the team. But for me, the real danger was losing those people. That was the discussion at the very beginning of the season. As I said, he's also very confident that McLaren can take the fight to Red Bull in 2018 and have to agree with him as well. I've said in other videos and on live streams, I can see them being comfortably a top 4 team again next year. Whether or not they can beat Red Bull, I don't know. I kind of think it depends on how consistent Van Dorn will be in his second season. But with Fernando Alonso, a Renault engine and the ability to build a chassis as good as Red Bull, I guess anything is possible. It'll just be great to see McLaren back towards the front end of the grid fighting for podiums and picking up those victories when Mercedes and Ferrari trip over themselves or have reliability issues. And sticking with 2018, Pirelli have revealed the compounds of tyres available for the opening 3 rounds of the 2018 season. Before I go over that though, I will just go over the rules that Pirelli have laid out for tyre selection in 2018. They say that each driver must save 1 set of the softest of the 3 nominated compounds for Q3. This set will then be returned for those who qualify in the top 10, but the remaining drivers will keep it for the race, and each driver must have both these sets available for the Grand Prix. Teams are then free to choose the remaining 10 sets, making a total of 13 sets available for the weekend. So in Australia, the teams will have the choice of soft, super soft and ultra soft. In Bahrain, it's the medium, the soft and the super soft. And in China, it's the medium, soft and interestingly, the ultra soft. That is going to throw up some very interesting strategic decisions over that weekend. It really is. That tyre is going to be quick, but it is not going to last very long in China. I mean, I guess it depends on conditions at the end of the day, but on paper, that's going to be very, very interesting. And to be fair, it is good to see Pirelli trying to mix it up again next season. It was a bit dull at times in 2017 with sort of 1 pit stop races. It wasn't really particularly exciting, but 2 and 3 stop races always seem to give us a decent Grand Prix. So it's good to see him trying to mix that up. That is it from me then on this week's news roundup. I will be back very, very soon with more content, of course. And don't forget to join us this Sunday for our Sunday live stream podcast debate type thing. Some great topics as ever chosen by you guys on Discord. And don't forget, if you want to join us on Discord and on social media, all the links to that are in the description down below. But as ever, guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.